The following is a presentation of the Radio Misfits Podcast Network.
From the birthplace of modern winemaking, Sonoma, California, welcome to The Winemakers. Local experts Sam Coturri, Bart Hansen, and Brian Casey, along with host John Myers, invite you to listen in as they discuss all facets of winemaking. So sit back, pour yourself a glass, and let's hear what the guys have to say this week.
For the record here, I'm here to support and to clarify.
Give me a break.
Bart texted me and asked me that.
I did.
I wasn't going to come to this, and I really don't want to steal the mic, but it's hard not to. It's right in front of me.
No, you know what?
Who are you?
Right.
So
There's a family element to this that I want an answer to, and so you had to be here because these guys would just make it up, and it would be legend.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's just here to make them really nervous.
So
this is a CO.
It's you know what?
I just spent 2 days in the same
This will
room.
be part of your annual review.
Yeah.
Yeah, right?
Wait, you guys do those, right?
Also, I'll say it. Thank you guys for your patience waiting for Megan to get over that.
We didn't want to be
Get
brought
over
up on
that.
some sort of suit for making her go back to work early when she just had a baby.
Shut this thing down real quick.
Shut this
Let me tell you
podcast
about
down.
regenerative.
She definitely did some regeneration. He did some generation.
Yeah.
The regeneration is still occurring.
Personal regeneration.
Yeah.
Fair.
And welcome to the Winemaker.
I'll pour some wine.
Go.
If you can't say Gundlach Bundschu, dry Gewürztreamer, for meaner, you should not be podcasting.
I'll give you
Starting off great.
So for all of you listeners out there, we're actually recording this at 3 p.m. on. It may as well be a Friday.
Whatever.
So
day
exactly.
We're at the same time that you're listening to it, 3:00 on a Friday. This is fresh live podcasting.
Right. And so today we have Joe Uhr and Meghan Murphy. Right? Are you going by Murphy?
I am.
Yeah,
Megalodon Murphy on the gram.
Yeah.
Best handle ever.
Giant ancient shark.
From Gundlach Bundschu. And we're here to talk about
And somebody else from Gundlach Bundschu also. Whatever.
one of the marketing people, the marketing arm. So anyway, we're here to talk about
He's photographed man.
right, but it always looks perfect when he's photographed.
I actually I do want to give him one shout out. We were at the DeRosa Gala. Jeff Bundschu. I want to give him
Hi,
a shout
guys.
out. We were at the
Hi,
DeRosa
everybody.
Gala last Saturday night. It was very posh. And Jeff rolled up in stovepipe jeans, Doc Martens. It was unreal. Jeff rolled up in basically my prom outfit in 1992, and it was phenomenal.
And he didn't win Best Dressed?
Well, first of all, Jock should have won, and second of all, Michael Muscardini won. But
That's
half the people
political
that
on that
work
one, right?
And
Yeah.
it meant that John Charles Boisé didn't win Best Dressed, which
He
is the
wasn't
first time
there.
he's ever. Oh, okay, that explains it.
So Gundlach Bundschu just got certified, not only CCOF organic, but also, is it California Regenerative? What's the correct
It's
term?
Regenerative Organic.
Regenerative Organic.
Yeah.
The Patagonia one.
The Patagonia one.
Yes.
And
Way to do your research, Bart.
right.
If you can't say Regenerative Organic Association of America or the world, you could not be podcasting.
and ostensibly change the dynamic in Sonoma Valley for organically farmed vineyards, because your dad farms how many acres?
In Sonoma Valley, 600 maybe.
600. There's give it another
Maybe 500.
okay, maybe there's another 50 or 60 that are, maybe 100 that are organic that aren't under Phil Farm,
Yeah, maybe.
and then add in
Is
how
Benziger
many
still
acres?
certified?
304.
Yeah, they are.
We have 304 certified acres.
So yes, Benziger still. So that's the ranch and so
Say it again. No, say the number at least.
Oh, yeah. We have 304 certified acres.
right. So look how that jumps up the
At
total
least
acreages
probably
in the
we'll call it a
valley.
25% increase.
Yeah.
In the
So
Sonoma Valley.
cheers to you guys. Cheers. Congratulations.
Cheers.
And does that include Abbott's Passage, or is that just the estate?
Yeah.
That includes Abbott's Passage. Yeah. So that is our newest property, or our new property, out in Glen Ellen on Madrone Road and Highway 12. We have 40 acres out there.
Okay, so let's start going back to the beginning. Essentially, you guys were organic farmers when it was planted way back when, anyway, right? Maybe not certified, but the Bundschu Ranch, because that's everything was organically farmed. There was no petrochemical, anything pre-World War II.
Yep.
And then World War II came, and everybody did what everybody else did. So that started conventional farming. You guys had been farming conventionally since whatever year it was. And how did that discussion go? This is what I want to know is how did the discussion go that we're going to do this? Because it's a huge commitment. It wasn't like, oh, maybe we'll try 20 acres. It's like, let's jump in. I know, Jeff, you didn't want to say anything, but this is a question for you.
So it was a long time coming. I mean, you wouldn't know about it by listening to us. You'd have to watch our feed, I think. But, first of all, quality was a driver for me at the beginning. 100% without question, whatever it meant to make the greatest wine we could. And, the benchmarks in those days were from our distributor at the time that had a bunch of first growth Bordeaux's that we were growing Cabernet and tasting in the context of. And that's sort of what cut my teeth and set the mission to continue on what my dad did. And when he sort of got there, Jim Bundschu, and restarted, it was all about sort of rekindling this brand after Prohibition and bringing this great quality of Sonoma forward. Not a lot of talk about sustainability in the traditional sense. That said, my grandfather was an avid outdoorsman. My father's an avid outdoorsman. We live on the property. It's hard to not have a little bit of a lean towards sustainability when you're living on the place that you're farming just by nature. Not that you even are trying to do anything special other than not die, so to speak.
Make it to tomorrow.
Yeah, right. But it was, I am pretty, at the time, I'm much more sophisticated about how I like to think about it now. But from the get-go, clean air was huge, non-soil compaction. So we quietly were doing things like putting solar power in at the winery. We did that almost 25 years ago. We put a bioregenerative wastewater pond to work wastewater down. Was only the third in wine country and the second to use solar power to recycle the water. So there was all this real work that we were doing in the name of sustainability. In my case, it was clean air, but it got, Mike Benziger is still a mentor of mine, and Paul Dolan, two of these icons. Sorry, is that what you do? I'm name dropping. I don't mean to be doing that.
Well, no, it's in honor of.
It's an underline and an exclamation.
Okay,
point.
well they're worthy of all those, in bold. Thank you. And what I saw in them as they embraced biodynamics, which is something that was very intriguing to me because that was like a step beyond just organic, but it was the mystical part of it. And I say this with all reverence. I saw their passion and I was like, I'm not just going to fake that. They're bleeding this stuff. I'm not going to just do that to bleed.
Left that at Justin Sienna.
And so it was one of those scenarios where, we did do a little organic trial, 10 years ago. It didn't work for us by our standards at that time, but we remained very low impact.
Give yourself more credit than that. Bartholomew Park.
Yeah.
That was always an organically grown brand.
Yeah.
While
we were there.
While it was there.
I mean, we were,
and you paid Enterprise Vineyards prices to make it sell.
Sure did.
So you had commitment to it.
So my oldest had to go to Sonoma, not Justin. But, thank you. But, where's Phil? Anyway, but we always want to do things for real, and if we're gonna make a move, it's gonna be for real because we believe in it, and also a healthy, again with a ton of respect, a healthy reverence for the California Sustainable Program, but a serious sort of reservation of any certification program that's done by the industry that's doing the certifying. I guess call it a Gen X skepticism a bit.
You're so much more diplomatic about talking about this than I am. I have something to learn from you.
But it's a little bit like you can't. That's kind of BS. So we did fish-friendly farming for a long. It's not BS. I take that back. It's meaningful, but it wasn't deep enough for us. Right. And I've heard you say this before. There was a lot of great motion towards sustainability through that program. But fish-friendly fish-friendly farming. We have a creek on the side, is a little more robust, was a third party. So we were happy living with that certification for a decade plus. And then hearing about regenerative and the opportunity that it is not only to keep our soils alive and keep our environment alive, but then to extend into our community, the people who work for us. And if we go far enough into how we treat our visitors, it became global, a little 360. And that was something that was very appealing. We're a long way from applying it across the entire organization. But there's a pathway to do that. And that's really what opened the door to the concept. But what really made us walk through was Megan's sort of arrival. She didn't quite arrive via stork like her young daughter has, but somehow she did arrive. And when she walked through the door and we were kind of leaning into this, is
it fair to say Megan wrote her own job description?
It's pretty fair to say.
He reviewed it. I definitely
at
did.
one point in time, she absolutely did.
So, Megan, did you come?
Yeah. So let's go.
Literally.
To Gundlach Bundschu as a regenerative farmer? Was this something that you studied or done before, or this was like you wanted to do it, knew about it, saw the opportunity, or?
Yeah, a little all of the above. So my background is in academically, I received a master's in global sustainability and climate change, and from the University of South Florida, Patel College of Global Sustainability, which is the whole name. So I was on the East Coast farming on a property that was right on the ocean. Literally, it was like 1.5 foot above sea level. And there I was doing, I did a full water reclamation system, solar panels. We started regenerative farming, completely organic. And I was doing this all through my program and a year after until COVID hit and everything shut down. And my husband was born and raised in Sonoma. And so we started thinking, like, how can we get back toward California?
From a questionable family.
Yeah, very questionable. And I'm so ashamed to take on the Murphy name.
As I sit here, which is like, where's the good one?
The family that I married into knew the Bundschu family a little bit. The first thing Joe ever said to me when I met him was like, "Oh, I love a good nepotism entrance into the industry." Literally the first thing he said
so
to me.
much you get sucked into the nepotism thing, and you're not even like,
is there another way to
came out?
Right. So I got on Zoom with Jeff and kind of let him know what I was up to. And I think just in light of climate change threatening the industry in general, this was after the 2017 fires. And I think the word sustainability was really gaining ground too at that time outside of academia. And he was like, okay, well, let's come on out. And essentially, and then 2 weeks later, we were on a plane and I was flying from Tampa to Sonoma, and I started the day after 4th of July. And that was my first time having a 4th of July Sonoma experience, which for anyone that knows, that's
coming up.
Yeah, it is coming up.
I imagine, so to say July 5th is you started slowly.
Hey, I mean, in Tampa, you have Ybor City, which is basically the plaza on 4th of July, right?
I'm so glad you said that because it is. It's so fun. Ybor City is the best. So yeah, I came out and I started with the farm team and just kind of got to know the vineyards and to understand. I don't have a viticulture background, so I was, essentially learning a whole new, different type of agriculture. And
well, can we go back to South Florida and talk about what were you growing on the farm and sort of like what the organic regenerative farming, sustainable farming,
what were the challenges?
I'm trying to also put my like Florida biases aside and be like, what was the farming community? What was the farming community like as far as
we were like our own community in terms of organic? It wasn't, this was it was a family run company. We were just kind of doing our own thing. It was a small. And where I was too, it was like one of the only farms far and wide. And it was kind of a new hip thing, honestly, in the area. And it was fruits and vegetables. We were doing, just like your general farming. We were
what does
doing
really well in Florida. that you can't grow here.
Tomatoes. I mean, you can grow that here. Anything you can grow in Florida, you can probably grow here. Okay. Besides from like tropical fruit, right? Which we had those, which was cool. But I was mainly, even then, I was really focused on, the circular systems of all of this and really applying sustainability to agriculture. Then
you got, sorry to interrupt, make you go back. You're here, okay. You're learning viticulture.
I'm here learning viticulture, yeah.
So what really happened was we had... Sorry.
Can we get a spin check here?
Yeah.
No, I mean, all that, the Florida part sounds amazing. And I do think she was on a lonely island out there farming organically.
Absolutely.
I think she's being pretty polite to her neighbors,
100%.
but it sounds like it was an adventure to be the one organic grower out farming.
It's been adversity since the beginning.
Organic.
Yeah.
But shout out to my cousin who at the time was working with us. He's not working here anymore, but he had come from he'd come from a big farming operation, and we had just brought the farming back in-house, and he convinced me that it would make sense to bring somebody in. It wasn't necessarily as the head of sustainability, but he sort of knew that with a brain operating next to all the bodies, you could up the game a bit. And so Megan did come in and write her own job description in those days. And, luckily for us, we were ramping up how we were farming, and then it just sort of morphed into the sustainability, the manifestation of what she could bring to the table and what we'd been kind of vying for the whole time. And, but it's been pretty exciting.
Was the implementation self-funded, or did you go for grants?
Oh, self-funded. Okay. I think the only person in the company who could write grants was sitting here, and she was too busy implementing it.
We do have there are some, CCOF does have some grant money from the state, and we do get some money back, but I'm talking like $750 max a year for each operation. Yeah, exactly. If that.
If Jeff comes, maybe.
We did just get not a bunch of grant money again, but a lot more grant money from, we were accepted into the soil inventory project, which is a whole other story. And we'll be starting these types of things next year. But
what is that story?
The whole story. Yeah. Basically, it's the International Wineries for Climate Action. They were granted millions of dollars from the USDA. And they buy the soil inventory project, which is essentially this project that is going to be across multiple years to understand scientifically with data points and everything how regenerative practices are going to be affecting soils and in viticulture. So there are a handful of people that have been accepted into it, mainly members of the International Wineries for Climate Action. We are currently not a member, but they brought us into this, and yet
another organization.
Yeah. It's another annual fee, right? So yeah, that's something that's coming up, but that's another grant money opportunity that.
Right.
So the state and
is that about soil carbon or beyond soil carbon?
Soil carbon, organic matter, water holding capacity, all of those types of things, which is also super involved with regenerative organic certification. Yeah.
Well, you and maybe Jeff, I'm sure you can come in on this one too. Sort of talk about the process of going from you coming on with the trying to just like find sustainable ways of doing things to it's a big leap from where you were to regenerative organic, and the fact that you did it without me knowing at all was pretty amazing. Those 3 years you stayed quiet about it, which was a testament. But what was that conversation like to go from where you were when you got there to one of the more strict and stringent certifications there are?
Well, I'll say whenever I first started, we already had the idea of going to organics. It takes 3 years, right, of a kind of weaning off of all conventional materials, no synthetic inputs for 3 years before you can even go after an organic certification. And Jeff and Toll, they had already decided that was going to be the case. So in 2019, we stopped using any sort of synthetic input. So that was already established.
And you came on in 2020.
And I came on in 2020. So a lot of things were already underway as far as our inputs goes. And so it really was like, are we going to go for this full bore or not? And I think to who Jeff is as a person, it was like, we're going to go for this all of the way or nothing at all. Right. Would you agree?
Yeah. I mean, we've been waiting in the wings. Again, the approach was sustainability. It wasn't always about certification, but that was the right one at the right time. And it made sense. And so honestly, even talking about it, it's like, it's new for us to be waving our flags as that to be some sort of attribute to engage with our brand, our wine. I'm usually kind of quality, thinking about quality, and hoping that that's what speaks for it. But
and you guys,
I'm learning.
You guys have always like waved your flag in either a making fun of yourselves way or in a qualitative way. Like, it's not just to do it.
That's for sure the key.
I mean, you weren't doing it for, you just said it, you weren't doing it for marketability. You were doing it because you were looking for a quality impact.
Yeah, and it in a demonstrated way that we could measurably impact the world. And CCOF was there. I was feeling like we were close enough to that kind of already, and that was still only one part of our business because we see so many people through the winery, and we see we that would some pathway to impact the whole organization was key. I'm smiling because I'm not supposed to be talking this much, you guys. Come on. Can you tell them?
I mean, luckily your timing was also impeccable.
So we have a new guest.
No. So, Phil and I are sharing a mic.
So Phil, best live dead show ever.
Oh, come on. There goes the next hour.
Yeah.
Night.
It all depends what you were taking.
There you go.
You know what? We refuse to answer.
That's perfect. That was
the last one I heard.
Okay, perfect. We had an earlier conversation, and you have a lot of experience, so that's good. We're good to go.
I do have a lot of experience, and I was overly impressed with what you guys put together, and installing regenerative organic agriculture on such a large piece of property, and to hell with them. We'll just do it. and it was a very impressive undertaking, and I salute you for that.
Well, thank you, Phil. That's a huge compliment.
It really was, because it shows the dedication, and there takes there's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, so to speak, to pull that off, and it's and that's what I think defines what you guys are trying to do. So it was really impressive.
That's
coming from the pioneer of organics and the legend of organics. I can go.
That's called a mic drop.
I'm good.
That's pretty flattering.
So
how'd you do it?
And having to deal with all that certification is such a pain in the There used to be hippies doing it.
Definitely not hippies. Right. If they are, they're buttoned down.
Right. Went from notebooks to spreadsheets.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah. So Joe, how did this all affect you?
Well, and
to start, when did you start at Gundlach Bundschu?
So that's a good way to start it off. My first vintage was 2016, and I was assistant winemaker. And then Jeff came to me and said, "I've got this great opportunity for you in 2017."
I like that. Did you get that nervous laugh?
And
then the place almost burned down.
2 times, not once, but 2 times. I had poison oak, had the toe from smoke. I had a little belt of rash. I mean, it was crazy. But right then and there, I definitely saw the opportunity for a sustainable approach to agriculture and what we can do with such a large piece of property as far as advocating for change, because we all know that federal government is not doing enough, and we have to do it at a grassroots level to really affect anything. And so happy to be a part of all that. But back to your first question, Bart, where we're at and what the impact is the scientist in me is still kind of waiting to see. But you can see with this 2023 Gewürztraminer, this is the best Gewurz that I've ever made since I've been here. I mean, it just sings out of the glass. Yeah. And all of the 23s have that quality. So I'm very excited to see moving forward how it goes. But, you know, Megan and I talk about it all the time. It's a long game to repair soil after conventional farming and to kind of adopt all of these techniques and see if they work in viticulture, especially. I mean, we know they kind of work in row crops, but this is something totally different. So,
so for you, basically, it was like, you guys do what you're going to do out there as long as it doesn't affect me in a negative way.
Well, you know, I'm glad Phil showed up right now to hear this, but, you know, we've worked with Phil since I started at Bartholomew Park. You know, we've bought fruit from some incredible vineyards that you farmed, and I've always seen, you know, the quality impact that organic viticulture has. I mean, it's not a controlled study by any means at all, but, you know, I've tasted these wines over the years. They always age a little bit better. They always have that kind of tinge of minerality on the finish, and, you know, that's not something I can't pay attention to, and to adopt that with our site is really exciting to be a part of.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Anytime that you get to express terroir and force it on the consumer, because it is, because you're farming in such a way that the sense of place is going to end up in the bottle. There's no way around it.
No.
And starting in 2023, having that vintage is a perfect vintage.
I know. It's a little bit,
but
asterisk.
And driving through there today, seeing the, you know, from the La Paz and some of the other blocks, that there's definitely a great color, and there's a great attitude happening in the plants.
Yeah.
Which is an important aspect of it.
That's always been my kind of approach or perspective on organic viticulture anyways, is you're stripping away as many inputs as you can and letting that terroir from the vineyard shine through. So,
yeah. Cool.
Can I tell you about some problems I have with it?
Yeah,
please.
For sure.
So
cut, unplug his mic, please.
No, I'm not going
What's
there.
your last name?
Sorry.
Sure, you can do whatever you want.
So, first, I said it today, and I'll say it, I guess, with the mic in my mouth. I needed to. I'm not a foregone just believer that organics means better wine. I wasn't. I should say in past tense. It's taken quite a while and a lot of sitting around with Phil and tasting wine for what the wine tastes like, as opposed to what went into it, and seeing that what Joe just talked about is really true, and it's been true. It's just I've been slow to completely buy into it. And one of the things that has made, you know, our neck of the woods synonymous with organics because of you guys and your family has been not only, in my mind, your connection to organics, but because the wines that you refer to, that you benchmark against, that you think about, the winemakers you engage with are like world-class, no matter how they're farming their vineyards, people and producers. And that's just, it's hard not to bask in the glory of that just being next door in terms of what you guys do and the mark that you've set. That said, as a guy that I swore all I wanted was 98 points from Parker and mud honey in my barn, and I didn't want to have to explain why. And the more you get into the complexity of what makes the wine great, the more I get a little more nervous about like how many people want to pay attention to that. And of course, we all do, and we love that if we love it. If we don't love it, we might just be like, what? And one of the things that I hope we dig into is this club of regenerative organic champions. When we've had a few sort of discussions with other soil professionals, conservationists around my grandma's living room. I'm thinking one afternoon in particular where everybody in that room was impressively cool in terms of herders, you know, bug collectors, soil scientists. It was all intense, but the conversation got so deep so quick, and it reminded me back to like when I was 18, coming of age around all this expensive wine, and I watched this guy who was a professor of mine hold a wine tasting in Los Angeles for all the students, and I knew he was so passionate, but he started talking about the details, and all of a sudden the kids that were there were just like, ugh. it's not quite like that. But what's interesting about regenerative organic is it's complex, and it's like to talk about and get into the details. I'd love for you to geek out a little bit on that, Megan, so you can, so you can back up what I'm saying, because I sure can't. But it really is like, okay, if we're going to bring this to the masses, which I think the objective here is, no matter what happens, the more vineyards that are farmed organically, the better we all are. How do you do it in a way that isn't just another thing for somebody to have to think about before they decide if they want to buy or like a wine?
I would actually weigh on that just a little bit, because there's all this stuff in the media about the death of the wine industry and everybody, like, wine brands are getting decimated. But younger, and by younger I mean like 50 and under buyers, are gravitating towards organic and regenerative because it's something that they believe in. And if you look at a lot of the Nielsen data and a lot of the data that's out there, it's showing that if you actually, not just the USDA organic stamp, because I think people have been like greenwashed past that,
get that
in a lot of ways.
Get that at Walmart.
Yeah. But if you're saying things like regeneratively farmed and, and you're telling that story well, the consumer's responding across the board. And if I'm not going to name names, but there's a lot of wineries where I hear them complaining that they're down, and a lot of wineries are saying, oh, we're doing pretty good. I mean, I guess I say 16600, we're doing pretty good. And people know that our grapes are farmed really, really well. And it starts in the vineyard with us. And I think that that's important to a lot of people, because if they just want to buy science, they're just going to buy a seltzer.
Yeah. Good.
I agree.
I mean, you're the young one in the crowd.
I am. I'm the only girl here.
Right.
I'm
so speak about your
only one
about your
30.
your
I'm assuming.
I like how James was generous with 50 as being younger than 50. That was polite.
Yeah. To himself.
I know.
I was just making sure that I, was under that number.
Exactly.
Sorry, what was your question?
Well, I'm just curious. Like, what do you think to what Jeff was saying? Like, geeking out. Like, well, generation.
I definitely think that it's very important to. I think I'm the last year of the millennials. Okay. So I was born in You're the first year. I'm the last year. That's why we're such a good team.
Yeah, exactly.
We're the bookends. And then Gen Z, I think all of this is so important to them. I mean, we obviously have the sober curious movement, but it's another side of this generation is being so environmentally conscious and wanting to be informed buyers. And I think another reason why it's so important to get that third-party verification and have this certification is to give the consumers that purchasing power to be making decisions that are in favor for climate change and in favor for the planet. And I think, and I don't want to get too deep into all of this, but then there's that whole layer of greenwashing and how I think that's becoming an issue in the industry, or is an issue in the industry, and using sustainability so frivolously. Because, and I think for me too, especially, group,
3, 2, 1,
knock over my glass. And so I think why it's so important to have that third-party verification and this certification is to be able to really hang our hats on that and be able to be confident in saying, you're buying a bottle of wine that is not harming the planet. We're farming for the planet, not against it. And their tagline with the Regenerative Organic Alliance is, farm like the world depends on it. And if we're creating such a great product that, a luxury product, right, or people don't need wine, we should be farming it responsibly and being good stewards of the planet. And so really that's what the regenerative certification is it sits on 3 pillars. It's for soil health, animal welfare, and farm worker fairness. And that third piece, the Farm Worker Fairness Act, that's the most unique, I think, to the certification. There's no other certification that wants you to look at how you're treating your people, how you're involving them in the decision making, ensuring that everyone is paid a living wage, fair wage. And I think that has already had its benefits on our farm team in terms of the pride that they're taking in their work and our, lower lack of turnover on the farm team. But for the soil health piece, that's the most important for viticulture and being able to farm for your planet and your ecosystem. And it's been really cool to be able to look at how our blocks and how our vines are doing in relation to soil health rather than just for wine quality. And I think, your grapes are only as good as your soil is, and then therefore your wine is only as good as your soil is. And that's been fun, challenging, and we're still, working on getting it implemented across the board. But that's what it's all about too, is constantly evolving, and you're never perfect, and you're always looking for the next best thing and looking to continuously get better.
So since you're both self-described scientists,
yeah,
will you
perfect
whatever that means in 2024?
Joe said the scientist,
alternative scientist,
right? Self-described.
It's not the only part.
I'm a political science, poli-sci, that's sort of a science, maybe. I can make awkward comments, definitely with science, scientific accuracy. Will you talk about both from what you've seen and what maybe you can qualitatively experience both in the vineyard and in the winery? Are there things that you've proof in the pudding, evidence that it's working yet? Just on the ground in the vineyard, from your eyes, but also from the data that I know you're all collecting as self-described scientists.
A block that was problematic that you've seen a change in, like anything like that. And I know, Megan, you're fairly new to this, but Joe, is there anything comes to mind?
How to say this? Because again, we're 3 years into this process at this point.
Small sample size.
Small sample size. The
Spoken like a real scientist.
Yeah, definitely calls BS on anything I say after this. But no, I think, the fermentations are a lot cleaner. I definitely see that. The vines are much more in balance, especially the older blocks.
Are ammonias more in check for the grapes that come in?
We've always had great nitrogen levels in our grapes because we used to be on an old turkey farm, so
nitrogen is
high nitrogen soils. We're doing great there. No, but those things, the way I see it the most is in the bad years and Megan and I talk about this a lot too, in the drought years like 2021, 2022, especially the older blocks where canopies were perfect. They were fantastic. It looked like nothing was phasing them whatsoever. It's in those younger blocks where we had short shoots, we had lower crop yields, all that kind of stuff. So what I see, which doesn't really answer your question at all, is that those older vines that have been through that kind of organic, kind of non-conventional practice with lower soil agitation, things like that, are more resilient. And I want to see the rest of the vineyard get to that point, which is what we're working towards.
And I will say we started ecological outcome verification monitoring before we started the transition into organic. So this is EOV monitoring, and it's looking at...
You say that, say it again.
Ecological outcome verification monitoring. So EOV. And
I'm not a scientist. I'm a political scientist. You need to speak slowly.
It's really, we're looking above the ground and below the ground. So all our soil health parameters, and then our flora and fauna, and our native ground cover, perennial grasses, those kinds of things. And we've definitely seen an increase, I think, just by driving up Bundschu Lane in our wildlife. I think the first year we went into organics, you saw immediate
It was pretty
uptick.
mind-boggling because I thought, like I said, we were pretty, what I thought was minimal, even if conventional. And just that first year, the wildlife just blew up. In fact, so much so that Megan should probably share her first day on the job.
The jackrabbit situation there is terrifying. I thought I was going to get murdered when I went there to take photos after dark one. It was insane. It was like Lollapalooza for like really buff rabbits. And they all just looked at me like, what?
When the sun goes down, that place is the real owners come home.
Right, totally.
It's like Beatrix Potter meets the Warriors.
But Megan can talk about the wildlife up close. We didn't even ask her about her first.
How was your first day on the job, Megan?
Thank you, Sam. Wow.
Thank you, Sam.
This is my second time telling this story today, actually. I got to share it with Phil. So it was my second day on an ATV ever. And I was driving out to, I was in La Paz.
Certified though, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
I had the helmet helmet, and, you know,
Hanging
all the
from
safety
the
features,
handlebars.
right?
Strapped to the back.
I was up at our highest point in La Paz, and I was checking irrigation emitters. And I came out onto the lane, and there was a massive mountain lion eating a baby fawn. And that was my
welcome to Sonoma.
Yeah, exactly.
Can you guys imagine that? I mean, we were talking earlier. Phil has never. You've never seen a mountain lion.
That's actually. I'm honestly more pissed off about it.
Well, my
Because
dad
my
got chased by one, Sam.
Yeah.
My dad has never seen one either. Like like it's rare. It is very
really
rare
funny
to
that
see
Is
one.
that a good or a bad omen?
No, I think
you're
it's
still
like
here.
it's gotta be like the
Is
best
it the lion or
It's
the
the best
deer?
omen ever.
I hope I'm the lion.
It's a great
It's a
omen.
great omen.
It's like it was a welcome
Yeah.
to the welcome.
It
to
was shell shocking to say the least.
It obviously looked at you and went, no threat.
Yeah, 100%.
Remember, you always
It
have to
was-
be faster than your slowest friend.
Yeah.
That's why Sam stayed in the ATV.
Just be thankful you didn't get there a minute before the deer.
Right, right. It was pretty busy, and you know, covered. It had all the blood on its mouth, and
Can you imagine
So
that?
fucking rad.
It was so cool.
Really,
Like,
the
you
photographer
told
in me
Omaha
is
right there.
brokenhearted right
Yeah.
now.
And I tried to throw the ATV in reverse. It didn't work. And, it was,
Training.
Yeah. I like ran
training?
into
Skip that part.
a trunk of a vine. I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to get fired. What am I doing here? What's happening? And then it carried the fawn over the fence. Hopped over the fence, and I was shaking all the way back, and I ran into Toll on the way back to the barn. He was like, "Are you okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." I was like, "Well, I saw a mountain lion." He's like, "Holy shit, no way!" So that was my second day
On the
job.
upside, you got the deer out of the vineyard.
He
That's a
did,
win.
yeah. He was doing
Right.
his job.
Integrated pest management.
Exactly.
Well played.
I thought you weren't a scientist.
See, I actually,
I'm a marketing guy. I just
now
have the
that you're a little more
terms
sophisticated,
clearly.
you know to take credit for that.
Yeah, right. I'll start working that into our beneficial predator introductions.
Does well on Instagram for sure.
That one maybe not so much. She got a
Yeah, that would have been one of those like
Nature's
sensitive
metal.
content
Right.
blurred out.
Right.
Do you want to see this video? Of course I do.
What's in your glass of wine?
Chardonnay.
So, what's going on currently? How's it looking? If John's not here, so I'll say it. How's it looking in the fields right now, guys?
Thanks, Bart.
Well, Phil, you were just out there. Why don't you tell us?
It's an incredible.
Wait a minute.
2024 is a very happy, lush year. The colors of the plants, I use this. Every reservoir, every lake, every pond in the state of California is overflowing. Is is full to the brim, overflowing.
Yeah.
And you look at your plants, you look out and what's going on, and there's just this big celebration and this sigh of relief of really drought relief has finally occurred, and we're seeing that in how the plants are growing, and the replenished vigor that is taking, that is going through these heat. We've had these nice heat spikes. We didn't have heat spikes like this at all last year.
Right.
And 23 is a spectacular year. We're not going to, but this is 2 years in a row. The crop level is a little bit different than last year. There's a little more shatter. It'll have its own personality is starting to come together, but it's ahead of last year, and it's it's a real celebratory type of patterns going out in the vineyards right now.
Awesome.
And there's a lot of misplaced plants or weeds, whatever we want to call them. But that's part of the celebration.
It's part of the regeneration.
Yeah, it is part of the regeneration because they're here and growing.
Yeah.
So I guess my question would be, what now that you've achieved where you're at, what's next? Because it never stops. Like, what's the path forward, and what are you doing?
Well, I will say the certification is, you have a bronze, silver, and gold levels to the certification. And then even after that, they want to see you continuously improving. And I think with sustainability, you're never done. I think there's always something more that we can be doing. And we have a lot that we can be doing still. And I think the answer to that question then is implementing all of the types of regenerative practices that we can. And we're going to be executing a lot of different trials to really understand how regenerative agriculture is going to affect the vines, especially in terms of no-till and different cover croppings, potentially dry farming, these sorts of things, to understand not only on our landscape how that's going to work, but just the different practices in general.
And ever since you guys announced that you were regenerative and you released the film and there was like a little marketing push behind it, how has it been responded to in the community here in Sonoma? Have people come to you and been like, this is amazing, how do we get on board? Or did people just kind of shy away and say, oh, I'm just going to go do some Roundup and pretend it didn't happen? And be sustainable?
I'm antisocial in a lot of ways, so it's hard to believe. But so no one really comes and talks to me about much. But
I was asking Megan
because you're always walking away, Jeff.
Or running if you have a camera.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. I mean, I let these guys answer that, and then I'll.
Well, I will say the day we announced it was the first day of my maternity leave, so I went
well played.
directly under a rock for the next 4.5, 5 months. So
that was really a great idea.
We're so sustainable. I'm pregnant. I gotta go.
Yeah. I've emerged in the past few weeks, so I think the response has been great, and what I've understood that happened while I was gone and now coming back. I know our wine club, I think, is really excited about it. I've gotten a lot of emails from students that are really excited about it. The WSET this year, the research paper is on regenerative agriculture. So we've had all kinds of students over at the WSET that are studying to be sommeliers reaching out to us as well for interviews. So all of this makes me so excited because the more people we have on board, the more it's impacting, or reducing the impact that the industry has on climate change. And it's farming for our planet, and it's helping everyone. So I think there's only more to come.
You're not ready to go back under your rock yet. Maybe a little bit.
Well, when Megan went under the rock, I will just say people reached out very organically. We had that article in the Index Tribune. I mean, my phone was ringing off the hook. People were talking to us, reaching out. Like it was a great community response. So yeah, you can, and then, with everything else that's happening outside of Sonoma, it's been pretty neat to be a part of. And that's, just how we're walking is nothing about, we did do a video and it's amazing. Megan has a great cameo in it, of course, but it's really just been what we've been doing that has done this. It's not really real marketing push or anything like that.
I think the thing that's been interesting and the reason I pause is because there's definitely a close group that's sort of celebratory and in awe, like in our peer group. And I mean, to even have your attention, the people who are paying attention understand that it's what it means. And we're getting a ton of kudos from who I always refer to with a lot of affection is all the cool kids. Cause I always aspire to be one. But realistically, there's a ton of other people that are just our regular wine people that don't even know or haven't even expressed that they care. And I think that means our opportunity is to, without sort of judgment or expectation or blame, kind of share with them why we're so excited about it and what difference it might make in the world, in a way that that gets them excited about them instead of feeling like we're talking down to them. Because I think we have a lot of wine club members all over the place, all demographics. Some of them really do care about sustainability. Some of them come from states where they don't even recycle. Listen, I mean, I'm shocked how many people don't recycle.
Recycle their wine bottles.
All these things where it's so new. And so what we can't forget is that it's not on the tip of everyone's tongue the way it is out here or in our community. And so that's why I'm always thinking about how do you make this something that's like celebratory in a way that everyone can access instead of sort of a hurdle you have to get over to enjoy what we're trying to do here.
Yeah, and that's, you're right. That's huge, as you know, making people be able to accept it and enjoy it without having to feel like they don't understand it.
Well, I think that's something that the organic, like the eco-environmental industry, which is a place that I've done a lot of things, actually fails a lot of the time, is they make it seem like they are the cool kids and that they're somehow above you, and they use it as a talking down kind of attitude or a shaming attitude. But if you can make it as a gateway and make it welcoming, then I think you're going to have a lot more success.
Well, you know, it's a bold statement on the properties that you're doing along the highway, the Carneros Highway into Sonoma. And for 3 years, this process has been going on. And, you know, this process started even before that 3 years. And like I said, as we're driving around, why did you put pomegranates there 20 years ago? Oh, that was my father's idea.
Right.
And what you're talking about is the expression of this family heritage of farming and how it evolved, and you're just showing it. We're just bringing it to the next level. You know, come on, join. You can join on the bandwagon. We're doing it for you, with you. We're doing it in spite of ourselves because we're doing it because we have to, and you just set this up and put it to fruition, and it's a great move. You know, and you knew it was right.
It's right. And it's also, I think the fun thing to share is like, unfortunately, like you had all the climate deniers and then it gets so hot and they just you can't deny it anymore.
It's only weather.
Right. But the same, you know, that's right. And I remember my dad, who's by no means going to be backflipping with the sort of the liberal scientists. I remember 30 years ago, I went to my first client conference, and it was a wine thing. Maybe it was 25 years ago. And it was I can't remember his name, but the Southern Oregon University, Dr. Doug, I want to say, but he was making a point to say, look, we've looked at carbon sequestration, and we've seen how much the temperature has changed in the last, millennium. And we've really looked at the weather stations in Oakville since 1950. And noted that there was this is a long time ago. This was when there was still a debate whether it was even happening. He said, we see that there's like a 4-degree difference since 1960 in the average daily temperature, and that the average date of the first frost was a month later, and the average date of the last frost was a month earlier than it had been 50 years ago. So you're seeing a shrinking of that. And I came out, and this is in the middle of the politicization of the whole thing. And I brought that up to my dad, and he's like, well, that makes total sense, actually, because he's been farming it his whole time. He's like, it wasn't even a debate. It was like, yeah. And he goes, it's not during the daytime, is it? And I go, no, it's not. It's because the night is warmer. And he picked that up. Well, that's a practical experience. I will tell you that, we were sustainably farmed within an inch in our lives, fish friendly certified. But to see the wildlife change in that first 2 years, it's like, you can't deny the fact the animals come out. And it's been a little bit shocking. You brought that up, Joe, but it's like, they were already a lot of them, but now they're out to get James when he goes take pictures and that.
We got bunny gangs.
But just sort of that practical stuff that, I think that, that we all have to be reiterating that it really does make a difference in the world that you can see. Mm-hmm. You don't have to just read it and believe it.
It makes a difference in your own personal attitude too. It solidifies your attitude. Yeah. And that makes just you're more comfortable. You're more comfortable walking your own fields because everything that's out there is beneficial. And that's it just makes sense. And as you said, your dad's been farming there for 40, 50 years, and he has seen the changes in. Now there's a few more misplaced plants.
Yeah. Megan's the weed whisperer for Jim Bundschu.
And what difference does it make? But it makes a lot of difference because there's life. Right. And you walk through the ground, and all of a sudden after 3 years, it's not like walking on concrete anymore.
Mm-hmm. So, it's for sure the case.
So it's a beautiful thing, and I tip my hat.
Well, thank you, Phil.
Also, I will say
kids can eat the dirt when they.
Yeah,
That's
as
right.
a person who, like, until a couple of years ago, didn't walk through vineyards at all, having been both in Washington and Sonoma doing so and taking photos in both kinds of vineyards, there's a market like the difference between an organic or regenerative vineyard and like a conventional vineyard is like it's preposterous. It's like the difference between being in like I don't even know, but there's no not crass metaphors I can make right now because my brain is broken. I think it those differences, as obvious as they are to someone who doesn't have the background in it, and one of the successes that we've had at 16600 for 8 years, telling people, if you look at a vineyard and there's bare dirt underneath the vines, that's probably not an organic or even sustainable little s vineyard. And it's obvious to anybody who visits here on first visit if you point it out to them. And I think it's what makes what you guys are doing and putting those logos on your back label so important, is that we now get to demonstrate that on a larger scale and as nationally distributed like Gundlach Bundschu is, and to be able to have that conversation on a national level and raise the awareness of the regenerative organic certification in general. Totally. In the same way that wine led the charge with CCOF and led the charge with Demeter, it is this, we have this opportunity with this product because it's on people's, on a dining table with a place of reverence. It has its own section in the grocery store and the liquor, it is this thing to come out with that. Yes, it is one of the 4 food groups.
One of the most important food groups.
Somewhere
Cheese, charcuterie, wine, and everything else.
Pretty sure.
Well, thank you, guys.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Phil.
Phil.
Thanks,
Thank
Phil.
you.
See you guys.
Cheers, Phil.
See you, Pops. No, it is, it's important for us as residents here and for us in the wine business, but for the regenerative organic certification in general. Topless Creek being huge in it. But just the more people who can get that logo out there and get people talking about it in places where they don't recycle their wine bottles yet.
Absolutely.
And things like that. Yeah. Just pushing the conversation in a way that nobody's going to be sad that they had that conversation over a bottle of that 23.
Diverts.
Gundlach Bundschu Gewürztraminer. See? Oh, you can say it better after a glass.
That's the secret. Now you're learning, Sam.
But now, Sam, you have to add the
regeneratively certified Gundlach Bundschu dry Gewürztraminer. Boom.
Have you had any negative pushback or feedback since announcing? Has
Anybody
just
drop the wine club with the any nasty letter to the wine club dropping it?
Distributors drop you?
No, I mean, no. In general, I think the interest is high. Well, yeah, I'm thinking out it loud. Don't get me wrong. I mean,
not because of this is what he means.
That's exactly right. No, I think in general, it's an exciting
trip.
It's an exciting thing to talk about, and a lot of distributor reps are who, let's face it, and especially in the big companies, are kind of beaten down in a lot of ways.
They're looking for good storylines to latch onto.
Looking for good
and they're
stories.
looking for something that is that they remind them why they got in it. And this is part of that narrative. But you mentioned Topless Creek. That's sort of our North Star. We have to shout out.
Totally.
Not that I don't know them. You've met there. We're on a panel with their Megan was their viticulturalist, but they sort of carved the way. They paved the way for this. And we watched them a lot, and they did it. They're such a great company down there. Someday we'll all get.
They're
down
doing
there.
some good work for 100%. And Jordan Lonborg is their viticulturist that I've had the pleasure of speaking on a panel with, and he knows his stuff. And he's. What I like about this too is it's a way for wineries to come together in collaboration and to work together. Joe and I have talked about how that used to be the way of the world in this industry. I was being super collaborative and was gotten very competitive, and and it's nice to have other wineries and that are excited to learn together and collaborate and try different things and share their experiences. And I've seen that with being a part of this type of organization now. Yeah.
Nah, I mean, I think the writing is on the wall for any of us who care that this is the next frontier and the next standard of farming. And, we definitely have to go beyond sustainable, even in the little s definition of the word, because the way it's going now is not sustainable. So if you sustain what we're doing now, it goes down. So we have to regenerate.
Right.
Yeah,
we have to be regenerative, but it has to be doing more than just maintaining.
That's right.
And
It's not enough.
And if you care about this stuff, and if you care about making good wine, you have to go there. We have to start going the other direction.
Wow, Sam, you've been really working on it. You know,
It's like he said this.
It took me a couple glasses of dry Gundlach Bundschu Gewürztraminer to be able to come up with
I have
the
to
right
say,
word.
you know, as a talking point or as a case in point, having one of the oldest, are you guys the second oldest winery in Canada? Having the second oldest winery in California be like, wow, we want to maintain being the second oldest winery in California, not like, oh, they were and then they died. And this is what they felt they had to do in order to maintain that trajectory. That says something,
especially if it's under somebody's watch.
No wine on a dead planet.
Yeah, it's
you could have just leaned into Mega Purple and Target, but you didn't.
Yeah, Mega Purple.
Someone cut Jeff's mic.
So, wait, well, I want to turn the table a little bit onto our hosts. What's going on? I mean, so I want to just shout out. You guys can cut this out.
This is called deflecting.
No, but I need to have a little red wine in order.
Okay, let's do that because I want to shout out.
Yeah, a little VR.
Jeff.
I don't want to.
Thank you.
I want Joe to.
Right, let Joe flex a little bit with the 19 reserve cab.
Big fan of these wines, by the way. I got to drink all the ones we took pictures of for the holiday, and it was fantastic.
Thank you, Ben.
Here I can get.
Well, I drank 2 of them. My wife and daughter drank the other 3. But that's I'm not bitter. It's fine.
Good feedback.
Yeah.
That's actually the feedback that matters.
Yeah, it really is. That's why I'm here.
What do we got going?
Joe?
So this is 2019 Vintage Reserve. We actually walked these blocks that the Cabernet from this comes from with your dad today. So yeah,
nice.
Kick the dirt out there. So that was really cool.
Nothing Phil likes to do than walk around a Cabernet vineyard and tell you what to do better.
Yep.
That's exactly what he did.
Exactly what happened.
It was great.
We were all ears.
Yeah.
We also had
That may be a bell.
Yeah. We also had Jim Bundschu out there, who was the originator of this particular wine back in 1981. So it was a really kind of, I didn't even think about how deep and how poignant that moment was, but that was pretty fucking cool.
That was really cool.
It was pretty special to have Phil come out. I'm a huge fan, Sam, of your dad's and his, just everything and to have him out. And he's sort of like, he's older than me, younger than my dad. And he remembers my youngest uncle. He was younger when my youngest uncle was farming. So there's a continuity in that was pretty special, but mostly because those guys came at it differently, but with the same goal, which was great wines. And that's what's so exciting about walking the vineyards with Phil. We talk a lot about the organics, which are important, but he's also looking at vine balance, soil. He's looking at all the stuff that points to quality. That would be the case no matter how the vineyard was farmed. And that was pretty special. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So yeah, the Cabernet is interesting. We spent a long time talking about this. We do a lot of things that make us pretend like we lean young, and luckily we get a lot of young people that roll up and hang with us, but we're pretty classic when it comes to how we think about wine and wine construction and varietal choice. So Cabernet was what got Dad excited about that spot in the first place, right? Because it was then cool climate versus the rest of California and could do old world acid and structure and balance. And so it's a little bit of the Vesuvian task since then, because we're in Sonoma and we're pretty far from the other universes where Cabernet is known for, but the vineyard's pretty special in what it can do.
Well, and I've heard you speak about it before that, these blocks, they're way different than the rest of the ranch, and it shows in that the fact that it tastes the wine.
Will you describe where it is and sort of?
So it's the La Paz portion of our vineyard. That's how we refer to it as. It's on the kind of southern tip of the Mayacamas Mountains, so right up on the hillside there, kind of behind the winery. You can't even see it.
Oh, really? Okay, you can't see it from Napa Road.
You can't see it like it's kind of.
You can kind of peek at it from Napa Road. You can see like the peak of Jim's roof, and then it goes out beyond that.
Oh, so it's above your parents' house.
Yeah.
Up that little. Okay. Yeah.
And then the 2 blocks of Cabernet that go into this wine are at the highest elevation part of that vineyard.
And that's what elevation, roughly?
$350 maybe.
Yeah,
I think it's
as opposed to
four, but it's not.
As opposed to the driveway is probably at
the bottom of the driveway at the winery is like 60 feet.
Yeah.
And what makes this interesting and begrudgingly not qualified for Moon Mountain, it's a little too low for Moon Mountain inclusion.
Right.
But it's south facing and on that hillside, so it's very cool. It's the latest ripening vineyard, one of the latest ripening vineyards in the valley. I think even that your dad farms. When we did a mapping of it, it ripens about with Howell Mountain.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I was trying to think about how to explain it to Phil today, but it's kind of like if Moon Mountain and Atlas Peak had a baby. That's would be what our appellation.
And there's no other vineyard near it, so it's not like you can point at your neighbor.
There's no analog.
No.
Like,
No.
If you keep going up.
Yeah, it's just to the right.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a we'll have to get you guys up there. It's pretty fun. It's a special place. It's not like Cayman in terms of otherworldly, but it gets a little bit like that. It's not rocky. It's just a unique exposure that makes it pretty special. And they've picked out these blocks in the 80s. It's rhyolitic ash, but all ash, really white soil, really weak, relatively speaking.
And then it's surrounded in chamazal.
Surrounded.
Chaparral. Yeah. And so that gives it its odd, feeling with the soils and then the chaparral. It's not lush by any means.
No, not at all. And back in the day, it wasn't a guarantee to get ripe all the time. Technically, it's a fun fact about the Carneros line in Sonoma. If you guys haven't talked about this, I'm sure you have, but it follows Napa Road, right? Well, the second you get to Napa, it goes off track and it goes inland and north. And so like this vineyard is pretty far south of the Carneros line in Napa on the east coast, but it's not Carneros. And my dad didn't want to be in Carneros because in those days there were a lot of Cabernet planted in real South Carneros that were really green beanie. Yeah, and he was like that. We need to stay above that. But it's cool by comparison. But that conversation is getting less and less relevant, because it's pretty warm. It's getting a little bit warmer.
Yeah, less fog.
Yeah. But it's delicious. So we hang our, Cab is interesting because ABC, anything but Chardonnay or Cabernet, but the site does both pretty well. Yep. And Cabernet is something, our big mantra as we, as a company, face all the hyperbole about downward pressure on wine. Number one, my personal opinion is that because too much of it is crappy. And it's
1,000%.
And what's funny,
1,000%. And just because you make a wine doesn't mean you deserve.
Well, this shitty thing isn't selling well.
So, and what's funny,
why is that? It's the millennials.
Well,
clearly.
But what's funny is back in the day.
Oh, but wait, they're buying the stuff that tastes good and is farmed well. That's crazy.
But back in the day, bad wines were bad. And you could tell now it's not quite that way because there's a bunch of just mediocre, or I say that
winemaking in general has gotten way better.
Homogenized wine, and
well, I think people think now they can spend more money. They're like, okay, so we're going to spend $1 million on making wine and $2 million on social media marketing, and fuck it, it'll sell. And that was true for a little while.
And so.
Sorry, John.
So we get into making the wines that taste good, but then we also spend a lot of time just thinking about why are we doing this? Bart knows that Bart and I go way back, and he's how many midlife crises have you lived with me, Bart?
Only one or two, I think.
But it's always the why are we here question. Right. What are we doing?
Right.
And the reality is, we really believe the world is a better place if you could just share a dinner table with somebody, and the role that wine can play in a dinner table. No matter who's at that table, and have a nice sort of open conversation. We sort of have this idea that we can make, the world a better place, one glass at a time while we're collectively around a table. And then, knowing that when you start to think about what we eat and what we like and how good Cabernet goes with some of that, not all of it, we're pretty confident that there's a reason to keep doing it.
Your move's sober curious.
Yeah. Yeah. But hey, so back to you guys.
My favorite topic.
Right. We're gonna need a bigger memory card if we're starting to ask Sam questions.
But a little shout out. And I think I'm sharing this fate, unfortunately, with a few of you guys around the table here, that you're not that far. You're not living, and you may not die that far from where you were born, all things considered. So when you sort of factor that in, you start to think about like, okay, who's coming through here? How do we make sure that the world's happening, the world that we don't know because we've lived here the whole time, might happen around here? And
Sam's been to Reno.
You know, but when you guys started this podcast, just quietly, you did what you do, super friendly, super accessible, not catering to anybody in particular. And lo and behold, it's become this incredible thing that you've created. And speaking as a one-on-one guy here, I just love, I know I said a little bit of this buried on your anniversary take, but it's pretty special what you're bringing to the world of wine. As much because now everybody wants to be on it, and you're interviewing great people, but
all the cool kids.
But
with their Supreme vests.
Thank you very much for noticing. I'm trying to buy my way into the club.
I mean, let's face it. The fact that Sam knows what a Supreme vest is. I mean, let's get down to it.
Sam read Thrasher in 1999.
I've been on Fairfax Avenue in Los Angeles.
There we go. But seriously, what's been great about it is like the attitude and the laughter that we're having here. This isn't, you guys who listen to this every day, this is not obviously fake. This is the way it goes. And it's a kudos to you for doing this and sticking to it, because it can't be easy. It cannot be easy doing this, but it's a
pretty
gift.
easy, actually.
If it wasn't easy, we wouldn't be doing it.
I think you're understating how easy it is to get Sam to talk.
Yeah, there we go. Well, so what's next?
To laugh at my own
If
jokes.
the winemakers had to say what success looks like in 5 years. What
syndication?
Syndication.
I think there's still a bunch of people that want to get on the podcast, and sometimes you hear people on another podcast and you go, God, that guy would have been really good on our show because he sucked with that host.
Shout out Bedrock Conversations.
Isn't that funny how that?
Love you, Chris.
I have to go now.
Yeah. No, you're probably more thinking about people in New York or something.
Yeah. No, there's more people to interview. There's
Don't add us.
more. There's more history to capture. There's more wine to drink and conversations. That's kind of the way I am. I think our list is getting longer.
Yeah, 100%.
And now we have listeners trying to hook us up with people. And I mean, that's happening more and more. And
we get publicists sending us emails that we ignore. It's awesome.
That's called journalism.
Yeah.
Big time.
Big time.
Unless we deem them cool.
Right.
If your publicist has to pitch you and they've never heard of you, then
right.
Well, that's exactly.
You probably shouldn't have hired a publicist. You should have worked a little harder first.
But we keep finding great stories. Like there just keeps being great stories. Farmer from Florida finds herself in face to face with a mountain lion on day one. Like we're in this thing that tells stories. The great wines tell stories, and there's all these great stories to tell. So if they keep listening, we'll keep talking about them.
Yeah. And things are going to happen going forward. And if we can help share things that make the industry better or make the world better, it's not that we're going to change the world, but if we can help move it, then it's well worth it. Right.
For sure.
I mean, whether it's Measure J that's coming up.
Vote no.
So everybody's kind of looking at me. No, we're going to do a show.
We're going to do a show on it quickly. It's and there's probably people at this table who signed it because it was at the supermarket and pushed in their face the ban on factory farms in Sonoma County.
This is actually bananas.
And basically what it'll do is shut down every dairy, poultry
that is
operation in the.
We need a member of the Strauss family on this podcast.
We're gonna have a member of the Strauss family and probably a member of the Reichard family and.
That just shows you how it's hard to be a responsible conservationist. Like how to navigate that.
Well, and there's these buzzwords, right? Yeah. Factory farms, no factory farms. Yeah, I don't want factory farms in Sonoma County, but when you look into the minutia of what it really means, is it means the end of diversified agriculture in our county.
That it's so interesting,
and something that we go through already. We're already like have a hard time finding enough manure to make great compost. And you start to like measure the factors of like, okay, if I'm trucking in my manure from halfway across the state, like what is my carbon impact? Am I like really, am I actually making a benefit by having to do something like that?
I mean, how about we live in Sonoma and it's hard, like there's an egg shortage in Sonoma and eggs are expensive, but we're also one of the largest egg producing areas. Right. That's bananas.
Weinberg Post Office, there's always eggs there.
Some local insider knowledge. That's what keeps this podcast thriving and vibrant.
I think they're $5 a dozen.
The 17 residents of Weinberg love our show. We're number one in Weinberg.
I had a burrito from the Weinberg Deli this morning. It was fantastic.
95487.
I had chicken tacos from there yesterday. Very good.
You know who's P.O. Box number 1 in Weinberg?
Keanu Reeves. Of course he is.
You just have to laugh.
Send fan mail, love letters to
the one with the Supreme sticker on it.
Jeff Bundschu, P.O. Box 1, Weinberg, California 95478.
That's funny.
He really wants the Supreme hammer.
You just have to just last long enough, and eventually it all sticks.
And eventually, no one notices your.
My great grandfather built the fucking post office. Of course, I'm Box 1.
My great grandfather Weinberg Bundschu.
Right, that's it. How'd you know, James? Damn it.
I love that it's called Weinberg because I picture like 3 guys who are home sitting like, what do we call this place? And they like take a sip of the Gewürztraminer and he's like, Weinberg? Yeah, that sounds great.
It is. I do have great pride in being a winery and putting on all of our like compliance paperwork. That Weinberg is your address. I
used to think it was gonna like hop, skip, and jump past Yountville, St. Helena, and Healdsburg, but somehow Weinberg is just stayed Weinberg.
They skipped right over it.
There's no French Laundry's not opening up a franchise in Weinberg.
It's because Grosskopf is still there.
There's also 2 great taco trucks on 8th Street.
Right. I would go to a Weinberg taco truck over French Laundry.
Phenomenal.
Yeah, good point.
At least go to a Weinberg taco truck many more times than you could go to those French Laundry.
Okay, Bundschu Company, any shout outs, any events you want to hype?
When does this drop?
This drops Friday.
Right now.
Yeah.
We have
upcoming shows.
We have Jessica Pratt this Saturday night. That'll be awesome.
Watch me chase Jeff with a camera.
She's pretty special, and it'll be a pretty mellow show in the barn with there'll be some seats, but she's really, really good. It's kind of so far confirmed, it's kind of the summer of women. Jenny Lewis is coming down the pipe.
That won't be mellow.
And there's one more that I'm forgetting. Angel Olsen. Yeah. How can I forget Angel Olsen? I'm sorry, Angel. I took her in the vineyard. She was not that impressed with me, but she at least came back.
Well, you didn't show her the mountain lion.
That's funny. I had a very similar experience with her where I photographed her and she was clearly bummed that I was a dude.
So, whatever. But we have a couple good shows popping up, and we
any wine club events or anything.
No, we have our regular stuff that happens in the fall. We're actually, I'll tell you here, we're talking a lot about Huachica internally.
Yeah.
And
here.
And it's funny because I'm about to go see Eric again. In fact, back here,
we texted yesterday about harassing you about this.
So the last time I was here at the 16600 thing, you had Andy Kabik from Vetiver, great
Nice.
playing DJing back here, and my friend Eric, who started Huachica with me,
casually rolled up with Eric, also known as Fruit Bats,
and in this band called Bunny Light Horseman, and he's he's an awesome guy and artist.
Original member of Modest Mouse.
But he was there, and we were talking a lot about Huachica. But when we started Huachica, which for those of you who don't know is a very intimate music event that we put the name Festival on in 2008 because there was nothing else like it. We thought it was going to be fancy to call Festival. And now fast forward, we went on hiatus after 2020 or trying to think about how to bring it back. But if you'd have told me you could see Andre 3000, Pearl Jam, Ed Sheeran, Mike Snow, Fleet Foxes, Vetiver, Fruit Bats, all within 25 miles of my house in 2008, you'd have been crazy. Like the music scene up here is blowing up. Right. And so as we kind of think about Huachica, which is still it's always been highly curated thanks to Eric and then Britt, my friend at Folk Yeah, we're trying to think about how to keep it fresh and keep it interesting in the context of what's already going on around here.
Hashtag bring back Huachica. Let's start it right now.
Hashtag, I just want to note that the DeRosa Museum is on Huachica Creek.
So I do know that about DeRosa Museum. I mean, I have a few things that most people revolt at when I think about what a new Huachica would look like. It sounds like this. Thump, 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 thump. Of course, Phil already hit the hill. I'm not sure what Sam thinks about that. But I mean, you know, it would be.
That's why you have more than one stage.
Yeah, that'd be anyway. So we're
I don't know. I think the stage that he wants is going to overpower all the rest.
The stage that he wants doesn't even start until midnight. So there's a whole festival before
I'm trying to navigate.
I've been to Burning Man. I'm down for it.
I'm trying to figure out how to turn that into a wine experience that's we'll figure that out. But it's
ecstasy and wine work together, right?
No. I mean, not from experience, but anyway, we love music and we're thriving right now. The ecosystem for music in our neighborhood here is as high as it's ever been, and that's pretty exciting. So we're thinking about it. But Eric, it was fun to see that down here, and Eric has a heart in San Francisco, around Sonoma, so he's a fan.
Cool.
Make it happen. We support it.
Yeah,
we support.
It's mutual.
The return of Huachica.
All right.
Anything else? How's the tank?
Tank is good. Tank is good. Yeah.
Do you guys know what he's talking about? The tank?
I do.
I don't think Megan does.
I honk at him every time I see him outside.
Yeah, exactly. I was dumping the garbage, I think, the other day.
Yep.
Bart's new tasting room.
Oh, of course.
For Dane Cellars.
Yeah.
In
I follow you on Instagram.
An old tank.
Yeah. Make appointments. We're there.
Are you going to throw a let's get tanked in the tank party annually?
I think we probably should.
I mean, I think you should.
I think that's going to be,
I call that Friday, but you know.
Yeah. You know what? I've always
bring some tequila.
I've always
tequila.
I've always been a big fan of celebrating the anniversary of the end of Prohibition. So that's in December. So maybe a prohibition, anti-prohibition party.
I like that.
Bring that. Get tanked in the tank. Yeah. That would
Coolest new wine tasting room in Sonoma is up there in the tank.
It's fun. It's fun. It's really great. And I'm totally sucked into all the history, and I have to get my dates down a little bit because sometimes I kind of like bounce around to the history. But what is it? History is nothing more than a series of agreed upon lies, right?
Written by the winner for sure.
Yes.
All right.
Well, thank you guys.
Thank you guys so much.
Oh yeah, August 4th, Stanley Mass Appreciation Day, Vinyl Sunday
West?
here. Where's West with Maddie Mishna and Fiorello Boutron from Alikai making a big paella.
Well,
come give Stanley a high five.
Yeah.
Oh, sweet.
Or don't,
coming.
but look at him from a
Sweet,
distance.
sweet.
Yeah.
Right.
Air 5.
Virtual.
Yeah.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you guys.
Thanks for
Thanks so
coming.
much.
Thanks for
Thanks
doing-
for everything you guys do.
And thanks for doing your good work.
Hope we
Keep
recorded.
it up.
Cheers.
Hopefully recorded.